A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and participants and members of the golf industry. Welcome to Syngenta Ryder Launch webinar, The Science Behind Nature. I'm your host for today. My name is Edwin. Today, we welcome attendees from different parts of the world. We do have attendees from Myanmar, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and lastly, Singapore. Before we start, I just want to share a gentle reminder. The webinar will be recorded and shared. Attendees' microphone and video are turned off. Attendees can only send their comments in the chat button below of your screen. All of the messages will be read by the panelists. We will attend to these messages after the event. All attendees are encouraged to participate in our quiz or poll. This will be shown on your screen shortly. Please place all your questions about the topic in the Q&A chat button. Due to limited time, we will only answer questions with the most number of votes after the presentation. Not all of the questions will be answered, but rest assured we will send an email containing the frequently asked question or FAQ and their replies on the August 7, 2020. So ladies and gentlemen, while at the end of this webinar, you are strongly encouraged to fill up a survey form. The links will pop up after you exit this webinar. Once you completed the survey, we will send a dog gift over to you as a thanks for your effort. So this is the agenda for today. In a short while, we will listen to the welcome address from representative of Syngenta and Jepson & Jessen before we dive into the Ryder presentation part 1, The Science Behind Nature. And then along the way, you will see pop quiz and polls coming on your screen. Thereafter, Ryder presentation part 2 will share a little bit about understanding colorant. And we will be very honored to have invited Mr. Lucas, the golf superintendent in France, to share his insights from Ryder Cup tournament. Then we will dive into part 3 of the presentation, where the key benefit of Ryder will be introduced. Thereafter, Mr. Raja will share with us his experience with colorant before we head off to the final segment of our presentation, where Shane, our presenter for today, will share the use recommendation. We will close off the webinar with our launch video, and last but not least, the question and answer segment. The entire duration of this webinar is approximately 2 hours. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce Mr. Shane Lee, Commercial Head of Marketing, Turf, Landscape and Ornamental of APAC, that representing Syngenta Asia Pacific, as well as Mr. Hendrik Fries, Regional Director of Jepson & Jessen Technology, to deliver their welcome address. Shane, please.
Thank you, Edwin. A very good afternoon to all of you who are joining us across Asia Pacific, and morning to our guests and colleagues who are joining us from UK and Europe. In partnership with J&J, we are very pleased to host this webinar. Thank you for taking your precious time off to attend this virtual event. The role of turf management is becoming more and more challenging today. There have been an increasing demand from golfers who are expecting superior turf quality and playability. Managing turf is probably an easier one compared to managing people and their expectations. At Syngenta, we focus on delivering solutions to help our customers to deliver optimum playing conditions to their golfers all year round. That includes, reviewing adjacent technologies and digital platform to enhance our customer experience. After months of preparations, today we are very excited to share with you how you could use Ryder, a high quality pigment, to improve plant health in stressful environment, and also to enhance appearance, looking natural. The COVID-19 has made significant disruption to many people and the ways of working. Though it will be good for us to walk you through demo trials to evaluate the product performance through our traditional launch events. Unfortunately, face-to-face meetings may not be an option in many countries today. Nevertheless, we'll try to bring you the best experience possible in this webinar. I look forward for more discussion in the next 2 hours. Thank you, and I will hand over now to Hendrik for his welcome speech. Over to you, Hendrik.
Thank you, Shane. First of all, thank you to all the participants for joining this webinar held by Syngenta, and special thank you to our guest speakers, Radja and Lucas. I think you will be able to provide some valuable inputs on actual use of the product, as well as a big thank you to Syngenta for hosting this and doing all the arrangements. So I hope you all will enjoy, and once again, thank you for taking your time. Over to you, Edwin.
Thank you, Hendrik, and thank you, Shane. So thank you for the welcoming address. So up next, without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenter for the day, Mr. Shane Lee, Syngenta Asia Pacific, Commercial Marketing Head for Turf, Landscape, and Ornamental. Shane joined Syngenta in 2013 as the Technical Sales Manager for the ASEAN Turf business prior to his current role. He has 20 years of experience in the turf industry and had worked in some of the world-famous golf courses such as TPC Sawgrass Golf Club. Shane has an MBA degree from the Rutgers State University of New Jersey and graduated from Pennsylvania State University in turf grass science. He had obtained multiple scholarships in the United States, recognizing his excellence in turf management. Over the last 8 years with Syngenta, he has worked closely with superintendents and turf managers to achieve consistently high levels of turf quality. So over to you, Shane.
Thank you, Edwin. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Right. So Ryder is a tool that can help you to deliver optimum playing conditions for your golfers all year round. I will now start the first section of my presentation to share with you the science behind nature. As we all know, photosynthesis is the process which plant makes their own food by converting light energy into chemical energy. It is really the fundamental to drive turf growth and development. Other factors that affect plant growth include light, temperature, water, humidity, and nutrition. However, the light quality and quantity play a very critical role in plant growth. When turf are unable to make their own food due to insufficient light, it will lead to the decline of turf quality. Photosynthetic active radiation, commonly known as PAR, is the amount of light available for photosynthesis in the specific wavelength range between 400 to 700 nanometer. The wavelength of the light can be absorbed by chlorophyll and used to produce chemical energy and downstream sugars that are used in many plant processes. PAR, also known as visual light, is the spectrum of light that can be seen by human visually. Of the PAR spectrum, red and blue light are most effective for photosynthesis. The plant itself has pigments molecule such as chlorophyll, carotenoids that absorbs different wavelength of lights for photosynthesis process. Chlorophyll are green pigments and trap blue and red lights, while carotenoids are red, orange, or yellow light or yellow color pigments that absorb bluish green light. The PAR light changes seasonally and varies depending on the latitude and time of the day. The factors that reduce the amount of PAR availability to the plant includes anything that reduces sunlight, such as cloud cover, shade that is caused by trees or buildings, air pollution, for example, would also affect the amount of power light for the plant, as they filter out the amount of sunlight that could reach the plant. Not all light are beneficial for photosynthesis. Some are harmful to the plant. Plants physiologically respond to UV light, power light, and to some extent, infrared light that is between visible light and microwave. Too much infrared light will damage the plant. The shorter the wavelength, the more energy the light has. UV has more energy than visible light and can cause sunburn. UV is also damaging the plant. Besides damaging the DNA, UV light can also damage chlorophyll molecules and proteins that is involved in the whole photosynthesis mechanism. So when this occurs, a process called photoinhibition takes place. Simply state, photoinhibition is a decrease in photosynthetic output. So when photoinhibition occurs, the power light absorbed by the chlorophyll does not result in the production of chemical energy, example sugar, but leads to production of reactive oxygen species such as hydrogen peroxides and superoxide instead. So we refer them as free radical. They are molecules that have an extra charge and they will bounce around the plant like a pinball that cause damages to the plant. So when hydroperoxides are formed in the leaves, they degrade chlorophyll, proteins, and membrane, which are the mechanism of photosynthesis. So when you imagine there is a large amount of reactive oxygen species are generated during the photoinhibition stage, it could actually lead to widespread of plant stress. That explains why we really need to protect plant from UV ray damage. What is photoprotection? It is the reduction of UV damage to the plant. For human, we use sunscreen, protective sleeves, and to reduce direct exposure to UV rays that would damage our skin and our cells. Plant can produce natural compounds that reflect, scattered, and screen incoming solar radiation. Turf responds to light stress by synthesizing extra pigments such as carotenoids and anthocyanins to decrease photosynthetic stress. Synthetic pigment can mimic the function of naturally occurring compounds that plants already produce to filter and reflect light. When it comes to protecting plant from UV stress, the idea of adding a little bit of extra pigment to the leaf isn't that crazy of an idea, especially when you realize that the plant itself may already be doing the same thing. So this is an example of a creeping bandgrass that's treated with UV light that exhibits severe decline. From this trial itself, they have only been exposed to UV light that is slightly above the normal rate. So this results to the degradation of chlorophyll, photosynthetic proteins, and pigments. UV light damages DNA and potentially cause mutations. At times when we see senescing turf that has yellowing leaf and is not corrected with nitrogen and magnesium, is that due to UV damage? I guess that's something for us to think about because there's minimum work that was done in this space. So the impact of UV damage is significant, resulting to declining turf quality. We will be sharing with you how you could protect your plant from UV ray damage in today's seminar. Next, we have a quick quiz to see whether you get the key message that we shared in the first session. Over to you, Edwin.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Shane, so much for sharing with us the damages and probably what negative impact ultraviolet can bring to us. So ladies and gentlemen, it's time to exercise your fingers and your brains. So we will see whether you are paying attention to what Shane has just said. And in front of you right now, you should be able to see the quiz that is popping out. So The first question that we have for you is ultraviolet light damages chlorophyll molecules and proteins, resulting to less photosynthetic output. Is that true or false? We'll probably give you some time to react to that. All right, we have about 30% is putting on their thoughts. So the question is, ultraviolet light damages chlorophyll molecules and proteins, resulting to less photosynthetic output. Is that true or false? We'll probably give in about 10 seconds or so. We still have quite a bit of people who have not cast in their votes. So perhaps they are thinking, is true or false? All right, so we will close the poll in about 5 seconds. So put in your answer really soon. And I will share the answer with you in a minute. Okay, we're going to end our poll. Okay, I'm going to share the results. So this is the result. 91% of you says that it is true. Ultraviolet light indeed damage chlorophyll molecules and proteins, resulting to less photosynthetic output, while about 9% say false. So I shall leave it to Shane to share with us his expertise on this. So Shane, is it true or false?
So 91% of the people got it correct, which is a good news. That proves that the message was pretty clear. So how it works is this: when the plant are exposed to photosynthetics of the UV ray, there's a risk that they go into photoinhibition, where because in that process they damage the chlorophyll proteins, which are very important for photosynthesis process, in which it will reduce the whole photosynthetic output.
Thank you, Shane. Thanks for sharing with us this answer. I have another quiz, which is quiz 2, and you should be seeing this on your screen right now. Perhaps we haven't gone into this, but it will be the right moment for you to see what is the best answer that you can put in. What are turf colorants? Are turf colorant turf dyes, turf paint, turf pigment, or all of the above? So we're going to test you a little bit in here. And if you could share with me, what are turf colorant? Do you think that it's a dye, it's a paint, it's a turf pigment, or it's probably all of the above, all three of them? So we give you some time to cast your votes. I can see that it's pumping up very fast. And it's getting interesting here. All right, so hereby we have probably another 10 seconds for you to complete your voting. So just put your best answer, your best thought in there, and we'll let Shane to elaborate in a while. Okay, I'm going to end the poll right now. And I'm going to share the results. So here it is. The question is, what are turf colorants? And we have 68% of them saying that it's turf dye, turf paint, and turf pigment. While we have 29% who strongly pump in to say that no, it's only turf pigment. And we have 3% who say that no, it's only turf dye. And nobody agree it's turf paint. Shane, you want to shed some light on this?
I think it's an interesting poll results that we get. I guess a lot of people came in, we started saying, we're going to launch a turf pigment, and thus you get people thinking that turf colorants is actually a turf pigment. So in fact, in my next section of my presentation, I'm going to share with you what turf colorants are, and you probably have your answer by the end of this section.
All right, thank you, Shane. So please continue on turf colorant so that we have the answer, and we will like to know the answer in a while. Yeah. Right.
So based on my discussion with many superintendents, there is a need for us to explain the differences between the colorants that are used in turf. Colorants are broadly classified in turf as dye, paints, pigments. Generally, they all give color enhancement to turf, but they are not all the same. Colorants may come in different colors, hues, tones. Here we are only focusing on the more commonly used colorants, which are usually the greenish blue looking. So many people had stayed away from colorant products because they had bad experience with some products that do not produce a natural color. So from far, when they spray, it distinctly tell people that they did something to the green. So based on my discussions with a number of superintendents, the feedback was they have been questioned by members or their committee members or even the GMs, in terms of what would they do, what did they did on the green that they need to use a green paint to paint over. So it seems to be, something that is just trying to hide or mask something that kind of make people more reserved in using this. I see this a lot more, based on my conversation with people across the ASEAN markets. So if you just, I'll get my close. So you look at over here, at these pictures over here, it can be, pigments and paints can be used to enhance turf appearance. The first one over here, you could think that maybe is just a dormant turf that you use a paint or the pigments just to make it look good, to put a coat of paint over or pigment. But if you think about it, if you have a broken, faulty irrigation system, and and the water does not actually, there's no irrigation over the period of the area for a period of time, and you have an important event, those are some of the scenario that you potentially would use a paint or pigment as well. For example, uh, another example would be, in a major tournament, pigments or paint pigments, for example, would be used because people would like to enhance the color, to cover any flaws they potentially have. And most important, they would like to look good on the national TV, is that if that's a major tournament, where I think Lucas will actually share with us more later. Or even when there is some disease issue or weak turf area, there are sometimes you would think of using a pigment or colorant product just to kind of cover it, so that it looks good for some events, or even to reduce the kind of questions you have from members. So dye, for example, is very commonly used as a spray indicator. You will use it when you want to spray, using a sprayer to spray over the greens. And also, a lot of you will probably use that for to mix with your herbicides, so that you could track where you have sprayed. The picture over here is very clear. Those area that is dark green have been sprayed with herbicide, so that people will not, go back to the same area and spray. Especially when you have your guys taking a backpack, walking around some bunker faces or even fairways or rough to do spot treatment. Dye is definitely helpful for them to see where they have sprayed, because after they spray 2 hours, they probably forget where they have walked to anyways. So another type would probably, you would probably see is pigments product that is mixed with fungicides. Syngenta, we have one of the product called Appear, which is mixed with fungicide. Unfortunately, it's not available in this part of the world yet. So not all colorants are the same. There are different product features and characteristics. Let's look at turf dye, for example. It's easily degraded by sun. Usually the next day you will not see them around after you spray. But based on my experience in the trial, sometimes it only takes about an hour. You don't see the turf dye visually there anymore. Usually they are very diluted. It's easy to mix. As for turf paint, they help to enhance turf appearance. They give a consistent look. It can be used as for divot sand to kind of color it greenish. It can be used on active growing turf, but that's some cautious when you do that, depending on the turf paint as well. It depends on the ratio of binding properties, that binding agents that they have, etc. When you over apply, excuse me, when you over apply turf paint on active growing grass, there's a chance that you may block the stomata and thus reducing the transpiration rate. And over a longer period of time, there's a risk of getting phyto because your plant are not able to transpire fast enough, especially in hot ASEAN countries, where some days you get in the 30s. You'll find that the older leaves are the one that will be affected first. And turf paint are perfect for dormant turf. It does not affect dormant turf, no negative impact at all. And next, I would like to focus really on the turf pigment, which is what Ryder is. So Ryder is a high quality pigment. It enhances the turf appearance. It gives a consistent look. It can be applied to divot sand, but again, I don't think this is where we are focusing on. And you could actually apply it to active growing turf and dormant turf as well. There is no issues with that. It is easy to mix, and most importantly, we've seen that it had improved turf quality and promote healthier turf. Next, I would like to share a video by university professors to give us some insights of how pigments were first used and how it has evolved.
All right, thank you, Shane. So in the meanwhile, while Shane is preparing the video, I think all participants will have a better understanding and the answer to our quiz too. So what are turf colorant? The answer is basically all of the above is actually a turf dye, turf paint, and a turf pigment. So I have a poll that I'm going to launch right away. And I hope that you can give me some lights into that. And as you all understand is that the COVID-19 pandemic has actually affected globally at the beginning of this year. And I would like to understand that is your golf course badly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic? So this is just to give an overall broad view whether what our courses around the world, how are they experiencing and how are they behaving. So we'll give you probably another 20 seconds just to cast in your votes. It's quite interesting if you have the panelist view. The bar is actually fluctuating, so yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking right, it's moving. Some people click yes, some say no, some say yeah. So we have another 10 seconds to go if you could cast in your votes. All right, so I'm just going to end the poll. And I'm going to share the result with all of you. And you can see that I think, unfortunately, 53% of you answered that the golf course is badly affected by COVID-19. And then we have 41 that is saying it's not so bad, but 6% say no. Here, I just want to reiterate is that under these difficult circumstances, and if you really require any form of assistance from Syngenta and Syngenta can do it for you, please do not hesitate to approach any Syngenta distributor or ourselves directly, and we can see how best we can work together to overcome this pandemic. All right, thank you so much for this poll. I think Shane is ready. So Shane, over to you.
Thanks, Edwin.
Pigments or dyes began to be used in turf in the early 1970s with the introduction of an actual crystalline dye called malachite green. Malachite green was used as a fungicide. It also had pigmented properties, but it was toxic.
Pigments really caught the eye of turfgrass research in the 90s, and it came out of some work out of North Carolina State University where they did a combination of fungicides on summer bentgrass decline. And those products were Aliette, which was a Pythium fungicide, and the other one was Mancozeb or 4, which was a general fungicide. Mancozeb had a pigment in it, and the combination of those two provided significant improvement in bentgrass, especially growing through the transition zone under the so-called summer bentgrass decline. And so it really fueled the idea is exactly what's going on there, because it wasn't really controlling a disease or something, but it was just an impact on this plant.
The primary way pigments have evolved nowadays is that they're generally not mixed with fungicides. Nowadays, they're being applied by themselves.
Thank you. I think that The video was really interesting. It gives us an insight how pigment has evolved over generations and years. So this leads us to the next segment. We're going to have an exclusive interview with Mr. Lucas Pierre, the golf course superintendent and estate manager of the Golf National from France. He will share with us his insight in the 2018 Ryder Cup tournament. Conducting this interview, we would like to welcome our colleague, Miss Caroline Carroll from the United Kingdom. She is the marketing comms manager for Turf. So over to you, Caroline and Lucas.
Thanks very much, Edwin. I hope you can hear me well. So before I have a quick chat to Lucas, in case any of you don't know the story of Syngenta supporting the greenkeeping team at Le Golf National in 2018, I just have a brief summary of what we did. And it was really important for Syngenta to support the greenkeeping team. As we all know, the eyes of the world were on Le Golf National in September of 2018. And if we don't have a really good playing golf course to play on for the players to play on, then there wouldn't be a tournament. And the greenkeeping team, including Lucas, was integral to that and are so important in making that playing surface perfect for the players. So Syngenta really, really wanted to show our support for the greenkeeping team. And we did this in a number of ways. So we, our technical experts in Syngenta were working with the team there to make effective fungicide programs. So we were working with Lucas to put in place programs, including Ryder and some fungicides that we got emergency approvals for early for France. French, well, actually, no, the European regulatory system for product registration is quite complicated. So we were helping the team there to get the fungicides permits so that they could use them on the course. And we also had two of the ex-greenkeepers that are Syngenta employees, had them working alongside Lucas and the team at the actual event. So they were available for any support, any questions, anything that was needed at the time. So actually having those two guys on the ground hopefully was really, really good support for you. And we honestly think that you did deliver the best Ryder Cup ever. I know that's what you guys wanted, and I think you did it. It was amazing, and I was lucky enough to also be there. Even as part of the greenkeeping team, one morning I went out and I was divoting. So it was a really great experience for me. So by way of an introduction to Lucas, Lucas's first job was as an assistant in 2006, and he started Turf College a couple of years later in 2008. Following that, he was part of the highly renowned Ohio State University program before starting at Le Golf National in the spring of 2016. I asked Lucas what he enjoyed most about his job, and he said that it's because no day is ever the same and there's no set structure. And I can totally see that, definitely around tournaments. You never know what challenges you're going to face. And his career highlights so far was, of course, being part of the team at the Ryder Cup, but also being the superintendent at his first French Open, which is a massive achievement. So well done, Lucas. I have a few questions for you, if that's okay. So first of all, why did Le Golf National choose Ryder to put on the turf at the Ryder Cup?
I think firstly because we were looking for a pigment and we don't have anything. We have some like colorant or dye where you can find on French market, but at those moments we didn't have anything to put on grass. So it was the first really thing we're looking for. And because of, we have a lot of different kind of species of grass on the course. And when you go to a tournament, you're gonna have to stress your surfaces. So you don't have the same like uniformity of color. That's why we start to use pigment. In the past, we are using iron sulfate, and sometimes it's a little bit too risky before tournament because you don't know what can happen, a mistake, a nozzle stock, or maybe overlap. So it was a little bit too risky for us to just spray iron sulfate before a tournament. So we were really looking at pigment to work on our aspect, on the aspect of the turf.
Great, thank you very much. So in terms of using Ryder, how frequently were you applying Ryder, and at what rates were you going?
So we've done like really a lot of tests before to really, I think we start to test probably a year before the Ryder Cup. And we basically start on 1 month's application. Then at the end, we were on every 3 weeks, and we never been over 800 millimeter. So sorry, I don't know the translation. I don't know if you're speaking in gallon but never above 800 millimeter. I'm speaking on green. And basically our usual rate was between 300 millimeter and 500 millimeter of Ryder, with a mix of as well Primo Max.
Okay, great.
Because as I said before, we have on our green, we have a good mix of power and bent grass. But as soon as you start to stress the plant, you're losing the bent grass, and you have more. You can see more power on the green. And we all know that not looking great, especially in Europe, on TV or even when you walk on the green, it doesn't look the same. You have yellow and green, and it doesn't look uniform as well.
Thank you, Lucas. So what advice would you give someone applying or using Ryder for the first time?
I mean, like, as I said before, you need to test, because I don't think in every different kind of species it will make the same result. For us, we've done ton of tests because we want exactly a good uniformity, or as I said before, we want something uniform from green to tea. So we've been testing many rates, and you need to adjust your rates with your height of cut. I mean, you will never put 1 liter of Ryder on greens when we have done 1 liter on fairways. So you just need to test to have the perfect result. And I mean, this goes through test. If you don't do any test, you will not be able to get the result you want.
And I guess on a major tournament, that is a really important aspect.
It's really important. It is. It is.
And
as we say before, it can help you as well to hide some when you have like dry patch or damage. It can help you to hide them. And we've done many things. I remember for the Ryder Cup, we have a couple of guys just with a hand sprayer and divots or pitch mark too big or dry spot. We've been spraying in the morning just to hide them on TV. And it can help you to do a better job on TV, not for golfer, but it can help you to hide some mistake.
Great, thank you. What would you say you like best about Ryder?
I mean, it's a range of things you can do with. We said before, you can use as a marker, as a paint, as a pigment to protect your leaf. But I mean, right now I discover, because I use it since two years right now, I discover I can even use it in winter. Because in winter, like you still have the same problem between you have some plant who growing, some plant who not growing, and it can help you to make the course more uniform. That's why I like in Ryder, it's the range of possibility the product provide you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Lucas. And my final one was, how do you think the Syngenta team was able to support you, I guess specifically with product use at the Ryder Cup?
I mean, like you and Lee have been like many times to the Golf National, so we've been really thankful for that. And I remember we start to work with Acernity, the fungicide, because we have a huge issue with fusarium in winter here, and the Ryder Cup was right in this period. So I remember we started to work together with the Acernities, and you came with a Ryder. And myself and Alejandro was not massive fan of colorant and pigment before to discover Ryder, and then we start to work with, and we've been quite impressed of the project and the results we have with. So as I said before, like we totally changed our aspect to the week before the tournament. We've been like spraying less iron sulfate on the course and more Ryder, and that give us more, maybe more confidence in us, and less stress to the guys, because I remember every time the guys was spraying fairway before the tournament, it was huge stress for him, because you're spraying iron sulfate on fairways or green before the tournament. If you do one mistake, you're gonna see the mistake every day on TV. So it's not something you want. So with the pigment, it was like, especially Ryder, it was like really less stress for us, and maybe less stress for the turf as well.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, Lucas.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate you joining us this morning, or this afternoon. Sorry, it's this morning for us in Europe, this afternoon for you guys over in Asia Pacific. And if you have any other questions for Lucas, then please just drop them in the Q&A for us, and we'll do our best to answer them either today or in the roundup later on. Okay, so back to you, Edwin.
Thank you, Caroline and Lucas. It was really interesting to hear what Lucas has to say. So I think you will be more excited to know more about Ryder. And I shall now pass it over to Shane to unleash and introduce that powerful tool right away. Over to you, Shane. Sorry, Shane, you got to unmute. So once you unmute, you're able to speak, and we will listen to you. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. After hearing from Lucas, I trust that most of you are excited to know more about Ryder and the benefit of using Ryder. So Ryder is a 70% plutocyanin green pigment. There's a history. We kind of call it a UV regulator in a way, or we would like to call it as a UV regulator. It is interesting how this name came about. Last year, we had a customer focus group discussion in Singapore with some of the key customers, and we had some discussion about the benefit of Ryder and what it could value add in the golf maintenance program as such. And one of the feedback that came back from the group was, why don't we call Ryder a UV regulator? Because the key role of Ryder is really to regulate UV and protect the plant from UV damage. And therefore, we kind of put it, it's a pretty good name, because UV regulator, it resonates well, and we think that it could relate very well to this product. So what are the key benefits of Ryder? Really improving plant health. The key is coming from protecting the plant from UV ray damage, enhances the turf appearance, giving you a very natural looking turf. It maximizes disease control and enhance your fungicide efficacy. So Ryder binds very tightly to leaf. It has a 1 hour rain fastness, which means that in a tropical environment, say that you spray Ryder within an hour, the product should be binded tightly to the leaves and dried up. It should not stain after that. But then again, if that's a raining day, that is lack of sunlight, maybe it takes a little bit longer to get complete dryness. So the color deepens up to 3 days application. It is very stable, and it is lost mainly via mowing. The color is long lasting in dormant turf. So when you use Primo Max to reduce mowing, you could also increase the longevity of Ryder in growing periods. Ryder protects turf from harmful UV ray damage. When applying Ryder, it serves as a layer of sunscreen to filter UV ray. It reflects and absorbs UV light. It reduces the oxidative stress, prevent formation of free radical, and which are damaging to chlorophyll and photosynthetic proteins. So in summary, when a plant do not undergo stress that results to photoinhibition, photosynthetic efficiency increases. When what Ryder is doing is really mimicking nature, natural pigment for plant photoprotection. So as explained from my earlier slide, by protecting plant from UV ray damage, it increases photosynthetic efficiency, thus enable plants' ability to withstand stresses like drought, heat, cold, and salinity. To be clear, it does not correct salinity or drought stress. It just enhances the plant's ability to increase tolerance in such environment. So an experiment was done at Massachusetts. It shows that under conditions of heat stress for perennial, Ryder delivers 80% increase in chlorophyll, 43% increase in photosynthetic efficiency, 60% increase in root mass, and 27% increase in turf quality. Let's look at how you could use Ryder to maximize disease control. Here are some of the work done at our research lab at Gillespie. And if you could see over the screen over here on the left-hand side, here is actually a microscopic view of a 0.2 microliter droplet of fungicide that is placed on the leaf blade. You can see over here, this is just Instrata Elite, which is difenconazole plus fludeoxonil. Difenconazole is the active ingredient. You will find it in Brisway. And fludeoxonil is actually medallion. And over the picture at the right-hand side, you could see that this is fungicide, the same fungicide plus Ryder. And you could see there is significant difference between these two coverage of fungicide. The one with Ryder have a better, a much better coverage. So, if you think about it, when you have better fungicide coverage, you have better fungicide, performance. That, one example I like to use is probably Daconil Weatherstick, which most of you are very familiar with. So Daconil is a contact fungicide, and it basically has limited movement in the plant itself. It protects the leaf just like a sunscreen. So the better coverage, the better your coverage is, the better performance the product will be. So it is important, when you apply a fungicide, it has good coverage. But with additional Ryder, we saw that it improved the fungicide coverage itself. So next we look at fungicides retention. Over here, again, is Instrata Elite fungicide alone and fungicide plus Ryder. And we are looking at the amount of active retained in the leaf immediately after application. In the trial, it shows that there is 25% more active ingredient retained on Ryder compared on just fungicide alone. Next, we look at enhanced uptake of fungicides. This is difenconazole plus Ryder. So the orange column here you see is that just fungicide and there's no Ryder. And the gray column is fungicide and Ryder. This is 5 hours after treatment, and this is 1 day after treatment. So you could see that there are differences between the uptake of fungicide already at 5 hours after treatment. but at 1 day after treatment, you see that 57% more active in the leaf. Next, we look at how Ryder enhances control in microdocium trial. So you can see over here, this is a trial done by the Irish Sports Turf Institute. Again, this is a microdocium trial. This is untreated, and this is 3 program spray, and this is a 3 program spray plus 1 liters of Ryder, and this is 12 weeks after the last application. So it is clear that untreated is pretty bad. And in the tree spray program, there's some disease start developing, but the one that was mixed with Ryder, it is very clear that the disease control is better. So in which it potentially increase the longevity of the fungicides performance. And next we look at turf quality. So the turf quality rating, 1 being worst, 10 being best. There's 2 different trials over here. The blue column here is untreated. The orange column there is fungicides. And the gray column here is fungicide plus Ryder. In all the, in both of the trial, you could see that those fungicide with Ryder mixtures has significant difference compared to just fungicide alone. So Ryder maximizes disease control. It gives you, it helps more efficient fungicide uptake and retention, as what we could see from the biokinetic work and some of the trial works. It enhances disease control. It is compatible with most of the fungicides. It helps to enhance turf quality and potentially give you some cost savings in terms of fungicide spending. This is next. Let's look at how natural Ryder is, the color of Ryder, and how it looks on a warm season grass. So you can see that this green has been treated with Ryder. This is a seashore paspalum turf. It is homogeneous and consistent when you apply it. You could control the color intensity through different use rates. It helps. Perhaps this is a product that could help you to manage fertility better. In Southeast Asia, especially, based on my conversation with many of the superintendents, is that people in this part of the world, they perceive turf as green equals to good, and members are expecting to look dark, lush green, green-looking turf. When they see a little bit of browning or yellowing, they don't like it. As such, a lot of superintendent, what they do was that they will have to use nitrogen they will increase the use of nitrogen to produce the greening looking turf that the members are looking for. During this process, a lot of times, unknowingly, people may be over applying nitrogen. As such, that will lead to the decline of root development and also potentially lead to disease pressure, especially the high nitrogen disease like Pythium and Rhizoctonia species. And sometimes, people would use iron to give the kind of greening look. I think iron is a good one if you just want to, have a just increase the color of the turf. But then again, there's often people encounter iron phyto because they over apply iron and turn the grass black. And also depends, right? In this part of the world, I think there's native species like Serangoon grass, for example. If you put a little bit too much iron, there's a tendency that the turf will turn black within hours because they are very, very sensitive to iron. So Ryder would be an alternative for you to produce a greenish looking turf, but yet not compensate on the turf health or risk of phyto. And over here, I'm not saying that, do not apply nitrogen or iron. These are macro and micronutrients that are essential for plants to grow. So it is still important to have that, have an adequate fertility program. So this is a photo that our customer sent it to us. He was playing with Ryder. This is a T-figure Bermuda grass green. This is actually at the Bluff in Vietnam. The rate is 1.3 liters per hectare. It's applied around on the green itself. It looks, to me, it looks natural. And all the pictures that we show here has not been corrected, and it's all the original raw pictures. This is another trial that we did in a teeth dwarf Bermuda grass. This is a nursery green. It's more at 3 mm. As you could see, there are three different rates that we play around. This is in liters per hectare. The one over here is 0.75 liters, 1.1, and 1.5. Even though the 0.75 liters per hectare rate you could see over here does not has significant difference when you look at untreated at the site, but when you take a close look, when you go closer to the turf, there is actually quite a lot of difference. This is taken on the day of application. So on the third day of application, when I went back to the trial, the color actually became darker, and it looks more different than when it first applied. Next, this is a Joyce Hill Xeon fairways. Because this trial was done during a growing environment, you could see that with 1.5 liters per hectare, the difference is quite significant, partly also because fertility level was slightly on the lower side during the point when we did the trial. Again, the rate, it really depends on individual. It also depends on your nitrogen level. If your nitrogen level is higher, in order to achieve the same amount of the same tone of color, you may not require as much Ryder rate. This is actually my favorite photo of all the trials that I've done over here. This is 2 days after application, and this is seashore paspalum grass. You see Ryder at 1.1 liters per hectare, and control over here. It kind of gives a pretty good blend of the color. So in the trial, what we did was we play around with different rates. We play around with different colorants product, and just to test around what we think would be ideal. And as you can see, I think 1.1 liters for paspalum greens seems to be an ideal rate that makes it look natural, and it looks healthy as well. So with that, I actually end this session of my presentation, and we will have a short poll. And over to you, Edwin.
And thank you so much, Shane. And wow, I can see that what Ryder can really do for the turf is impressive. So I'm going to launch a poll, and you could probably give me your thoughts. And the poll here is, how would you use Ryder? First, will you be using it in combination with Primo Max or other fertility program? Or are you going to use it as a standalone application, or mixture with fungicide, or all of the above, or perhaps you have not decided yet? So we give you some time to actually put in your thoughts. So the question here is, how would you use Ryder? You're going to use in combination with Primo Max and other fertility program, or you're going to do it just as a standalone application, or you intend to mix it with fungicide, or perhaps all three I just mentioned, or maybe you have not decided it for the time being. We're going to end a poll in about 10 seconds, so just put in your vote. All right, so I'm going to close the poll, and I'm going to share the answer right now. And if you can see, 58% of the participants intend to do all of the above. So they are going to use in combination with PrimoMax or fertility program as a standalone or even together with a fungicide. So we have quite a balance of 16% who just want to do with fungicide, and another 60% who have not decided. Do let us know if you have any concern on that. If you are relating to technical aspect, and we will be most happy to address your concern. And we have 10% who is going to use together with fertility or PrimoMax. Thanks for casting your votes. So up next, we have another exclusive interview. So we are very glad that today we are able to invite Mr. Raja. Mr. Raja is the golf course senior superintendent of Warren Golf and Country Club in Singapore. He has 30 years of turf management and 12 years experience of using turf colorant. He is also the Class A member of GCS AA and awarded the Superintendent of the Year in 2017 by Asian Golf. So conducting this interview is Mr. Shane Lee. Over to you, Shane.
Thanks, Edwin. Hi, Raja. Thanks for being here with us as one of our speakers. With your experience in turf colorants for more than 12 years, I really would like to get some insights from you. You know, I had numerous discussions with superintendents around pigment usage. It seems like the number one concern they have is, is often because they have been challenged by their members, why they have been, why they have used turf paint on their greens to hide, are they trying to hide something? I trust that, you have experienced this when you apply colorant products on turf. Can you share with us the challenges you have experienced when using colorants product?
Yes, Shane, definitely I have been questioned by a member and also a management at a time when I'm applying a colorant product. They perceive that product with a colorant as a turf paint that are used to cover imperfection in turf qualities. I had bad experience with some of the colorant product which I have used in the past. The member complained about having a blue stain in a ball and also the golf shoe. That is the big challenge when you are facing with a member.
So thanks, Raja. So you were one of those first guys that have tried Ryder in Singapore. Maybe you can share with us more about your experience when using Ryder.
Ryder has a very natural color and has blend in well with the turf. Some of the pigment I have used prior did not blend in well with the Bermuda grass, especially Thief Eagle. In one occasion, when during a raining season, I have met application of a Ryder plus Primo when my green was beginning to decline and thinning out, and I noticed significant improvement in 5 days after my application. I even get a compliment from my members and also my general manager that turf is looking great. In fact, nobody noticed there is a pigment that been applied. So natural is blending well. And the following day, the first mowing, the grass is more natural look. You can't even see there is some error in turf. And I have noticed not receive any complaint from golfer about the stain on their ball and also in the shoe. I tried to roll a golf ball after I sprayed about 10 minutes. I didn't get any stain on a golf ball. Even I would like to, if in the challenge time, I can put it within about 10 minutes before the golfer play in that area, because it didn't stick with a golf ball. So we have that sort of confidence. And I have smoothed also the green after we sprayed while we are doing a trial. After we sprayed, after about 15 to 20 minutes, let it dry. Then you mow. This is take place in the evening when it's the dry weather. You spray it after 15 to 20 minutes. Then you mow the greens. You will not get any stain on the roller or the cutting unit.
Right. I think during my trial, I definitely got see the same thing as well. Even though we kind of claim that the rain fastness is 1 hour, in Singapore climate, after 15 minutes, even I use my fingers to rub against the turf, the colors are not dropping. It tends to dry up pretty fast. I guess also because we get pretty hot sometimes. And also find that when we mow, after the first mow, Ryder blend in much better than right after application itself. Right, Raja, how do you usually apply Ryder?
Okay, I find it is easy to handle and mix with the other fertilities and also Primo product in my spray tank. After I pour Ryder in a agitated spray tank, within a minute it will mix well with the other solutions. Even I would tank mix with a Primo and a Ryder on my weekly program. Ideally, it would be applied when Wednesday to promote consistent playing surface and a natural looking turf for my member for weekends, especially Saturday, Sunday. The green will look natural and uniform.
So would you, because many of our customers, they like Decano weather stick, but then one of the feedback they often said was they just didn't like the whitish look, because it sticks on the leaves, and then after application, you could see the whitish look on the turf. I know that you have mixed with fungicides before. Have you ever mixed it with Deconil?
Okay, Shane, you are coming to my point. The next one, I has mixed and very good experience with Deconil weather sick mixed with Ryder, and the often whitish look of the fungicide is quite unsightly, and at least about 70% of the whitish look will be taken out by the Ryder and is look more natural. It's not whitish. We have that sort of issues when we look at the green from very distant. Suddenly you have a uniform green for about 5 days. When you apply Daconil, you can see the difference. That is the first comment is coming from member. What you done to the green today? When you put it a Ryder, you don't have that sort of comments. They can still accept the color. Naturally, they can different. If like a professional players, they can really know there is something is not right with the green because the whitish look. I always now currently always mix with the Daconil weather stick with a Ryder.
That's a good comment. Maybe we should look into how to enhance, a formulation for Decanil, because this feedback it seems to be very often brought up, and perhaps Ryder is the solution. So, Raja, how would you achieve your desired color for Ryder in terms of the red? Would you kind of tank mix them, ready in the shop before you go out, or would you kind of test the rate parallel? How do you do that? Because I know that you have different fertility programs. Sometimes, when fertility level are slightly on the higher side, potentially you would need lesser Ryder to achieve the color that you're looking for.
Okay, I would pre-mix Ryder in my tank. Depend on what are the fungicide or Primo apps. It depends what we are going with, but we have, in my experience, we have a rate saying that 1 liter per hectare. That is for Primo. If we are going for Deconil, then we need a slightly higher because of the whitish look. We'll mix standard as a 1 liter per hectare and bring along small bottle of about 500 ml, and we are carry with to a first green. We spray and have a look what is the color is suit me or suit the green. Depend on the green that day. Maybe we are on a drought, maybe we have to add in, or that is basically is on a site we will add up, and it's easy to mix. Just pour in within about 2 minutes. You mix well, and I prefer a darker color, then I increase the rate. A rider give me the flexibility of achievement on a preferred color based on the rates. I can just change whenever I need it. That is the beauty of a rider.
I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's interesting, you know, what you have shared. But I would just wonder, is it going to be messy when you bring the, you know, you bring the colorant to the green and then you try to pour in and then to adjust? Is that messy at all? Do you find it?
It's not messy because it's a very the colorants are more concentrated, and you are just going to add in another about, maybe you are bringing about 500 ml, but we are putting in maybe about 200 just to have a look on the first green. Then we are going to a second green.
All right. Good. So I know when we discussed the last time, you have a special way, or you have your way of using pigment in terms of your spray technique. Maybe you could share with everyone over here, how would you spray Ryder on your greens, for example?
Applying pigment is an art. I think Lucas will be have more experience, but it's art. When you are spraying on a green or approaching a green, you have to speed up before you are, and you have to be a very consistent speed before you are leaving the green, and you have to speed up and bring it out of a green and to blend it well, so it'll be more look natural. Even though on a camera, and also for presentation as a superintendent, as a presentation, you look at it, you will be blend in very nicely from very far. That is it's an art. It's not just go and spray and all this. Another things, when you are using a walking broom, we normally will ask the boys to run inside the green and start walk from the edge of the green, and when he come to a finishing, he have to run out with a walking broom. So the mist will be just blend in nicely to look more natural. For downward, even from a camera angle, you can see consistently blend in naturally. Another thing, when you are doing another way I'm doing, there is we call it as when I'm treating a selective area, like bare patches, or is that area is looking little bit dull or thin area, I would like to use a air spray. We call it air spray techniques to achieve consistently the application that is help to blend in with the product well. That means when you are doing an air spray, you are doing in air, so you will be drop like a plain application. It will be blend in with the turf, especially when you are applying on the greens. You have a little bit scalping area. You can't go and do a pigment direct. You have to do a air spray. That is art. As to come with experience, and also you have to go and try, then you have to achieve. At the same time, what is the rate you are using, that one also is making a call. You cannot use a very darker color to do a hairspray. Only that spot will looking very dark from a camera angles. You have to play around, then you are happy with the natural look. That is the rate.
Wow, I think there's a lot to learn when using in Ryder. It's definitely an art hearing from what you're saying. Honestly, I've never thought of spraying that way, but it really makes sense. And I'm glad I'm not your spray applicator. I'll be very tired after spraying the greens because I need to run and slow down and run off the green. Well, thank you very much, Raja, for your insights and sharing with us your techniques. And we'll leave the rest, of the session during the Q&A. I trust that the many attendees would be interested to ask you more questions around how you would have applied Ryder. So thank you, Raja, for your interview, and really appreciate you being here to talk to everyone over here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Shen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, while Shane is actually preparing the last segment of the presentation, I would really like to say, Raja, please invite me to your course when your guys are actually applying Ryder. The way that you just described, it sounds very interesting to me, and perhaps I need to bring an umbrella along when you're applying that. So yeah, so do invite me. I'm just a call away, as you always know. All right, back to you, Shane.
Thank you, Shen.
Thank you, Elwin. So we are in the final section of my presentation. It's the use recommendations. So we have heard from Raja, we have heard from Lucas. It's interesting, how people have used it in their golf course. I think there's no one straight answer to that. First, I think for us it's really during the periods of low light conditions, especially in this part of the world, we have monsoon season and also under shady conditions. We know that turf do not have sufficient power light for photosynthesis, and thus it reduced turf density and also resulted in shallow rooting. So we recommend you to precondition turf with Primo Max together with Ryder prior to low light periods. Over here, this is a trial done in Singapore. It's a pod study that we did on the seashore Paspalam. We have untreated, and the one treated here is with Primo Max, 200 mils per hectare at 14 days interval. So 3 consecutive application. What we did was, after that, we put the plant into stress without sunlight and without water. As you could see, the results here is very significant. The plot that was untreated is barely surviving. There's not much roots, but the one with Primo Max is still I think holding on well. The root is still very healthy over there. So what Primo does is really to increase reserve carbohydrates in the roots, to enhance root development. Therefore, it kind of strengthens plants' ability to withstand stress. Also, with turf regulation, it helps to increase chlorophyll content in the leaves. Again, Ryder mimic chlorophyll pigments to absorb the red and blue light, which is most effective for photosynthesis. So when you combine these two products together, you enhance the overall plant health and condition them to overcome onset stresses. So the UV index is an international standard index that describes the level of solar radiation on Earth's surface that range from 0 to 11 and above. The higher the index value indicates a greater potential for harmful effect to the skin and eyes. So plant again is as susceptible to UV exposure and damage just like human. Thus, it is important to protect plant from UV ray. We know that in ASEAN countries are prone to UV radiation. As you could see from the 2 articles from Singapore and Vietnam. So what are the factors that affect surface radiation and the UV index? Time of the day. It is common for the UV index to reach very high or extreme between 11 to 3 p.m. on a daily basis. On the day have little cloud. So in the night, you perhaps have zero UV index. So time of the year is also important depending where you are located. So in the months where there is less cloud and where position of sun is directly over equator, that's the period of time you get higher UV index. Latitude, the closer we are from the equator, the higher exposure we will get. So UV radiation, the altitude, for example, UV radiation increases, when the altitude increases. I think cloud cover also play a very important factor. Having thick cloud can help to absorb or scatter most UV radiation and keep UV index value from reaching very high or extreme level. I have extracted the Singapore UV index from National Environment Agency website. So based on the 7 years historical data from 2011 to 2017, it shows that despite the amount of cloud cover we have in Singapore, the data still show that Singapore is consistently exposed to UV ray year-round. So February to April and September seems to be very high. So if we dive into a specific day in February, you will find that in a day, in one day, whereas the average is very high, as you look at this is the timing over here, you could see that from 11 to 5 p.m. the UVI are all at least high, and between 1 to 3 p.m. that's extreme. So these are really something we need to watch out for. It's probably good for you to understand the UV index where you are located. So this is a typical program that we could think for Singapore, where over here you could see here are the UV exposure. Red is very high and the orange are high as what we could see. So we need to make sure there's protection to the plant from UV ray damage so that you could maximize its photosynthetic efficiency and also to promote healthier turf. Remember, when plants are exposed to UV, they actually degraded the photosynthetic mechanism that thus it reduces photosynthetic output. So this is the high risk period over here. You can see is actually the period where Singapore typically has high disease pressure. May, for example, this April to June, for example, is one of the worst period that we have, especially for Bermuda grass. And based on the data we have collected over the last 7-8 years, we could see that this is really worrying, because there are a few incidents that almost all the golf courses have disease outbreak at the same time. So I'm not sure whether the UV ray play a big part that caused the disease outbreak. But what I know is during this period of time, we have high humidity, we have morning or afternoon shower and followed by hot sun. That is a perfect environment for disease outbreak. But having the UV exposure that high from February to April, I think it doesn't help, because because the plant probably are not photosynthesis efficiently at a point of time. If we could precondition them and get them healthier through the stage, maybe the disease outbreak would be lesser. I think that's based on my assumption when I look into all this data and kind of factor that in. So again, during the high disease period, probably is a good idea to add in Ryder so you could maximize your fungicide efficacy. And you could actually use Ryder to enhance turf appearance, looking natural all year round. You know, whether you have an important event or you have a major tournament, or just like what Raja said, he applied it on Wednesday, and you know, so that it looks great on the weekends. Again, there are different people have different ways of doing it. There's some customers, they told me that they would like to put Ryder on Friday, and so that on Saturday after the first mold, the turf looks perfect, right? So there's a different ways how you could use Ryder. You could use Ryder as a standalone product. Um, I think it's a good idea to mix with Primo Mix, or you could also use it with mixture with fungicides. So I know some of you here are from Myanmar or northern Vietnam. You would kind of experience a mild winter environment. So pigment application can also increase canopy temperature in cool climate and aid plant growth. It can delay dormancy in turf and faster green up. I'm not sure in a mild winter environment how, I mean, because you don't really go into dormancy, but definitely with the increased canopy temperature, it will help to promote healthier turf, especially for warm seasons. So there have been reports that it improve turf quality and density. Um, so compared plot treated with Ryder and some pigments, they have shown that pigments application has about 10 as much as 10 degrees warmer. But then I don't think this apply to a mild winter environment. So that probably the temperature itself is very cold. It's probably in you know, zero or minus. Therefore, you could kind of see the distinct difference. Probably a mild winter environment, I would think is just a couple degrees Celsius maximum. So, and also some of you may do overseeding during winter time with ryegrass, for example. This would be a good substitute because we know that, you know, when you overseed, you need label to maintain it. You need to, well, perhaps you need to apply fungicide at some times, and transitioning the turf back when summer months kicks in can be quite messy, and we know that not a lot of warm season grass do not have seeded variety, so you need to do a lot of sod work. So in short, that would be a good good alternative to overseeding if you do overseed during your winter time. So in terms of the application rate for greens, tees of turf, there is more below 12 mm. Our recommendation is go with 0.75 to 1.5 liters per hectare. For fairways, rough, or turf maintained above 12 mm is about 1 to 2 liters per hectare. You could use higher rates for deeper green color and higher height of cut. Adjust your rate accordingly as to your preference. Results vary among turf species, height of cut, and nitrogen fertility. As we just now heard from Lucas, you know, he uses only, I think it's 300, 200-ish or 300 on fairways. So the rate is really dependent. And I guess is what would you like to use it for, and what are you trying to achieve? Like what Raja also mentioned, he tends to add on the rate higher when he mixes it with Deccanil weather stick because he wants to mask the whitish look. And then next week, you know, water volume recommendation, we have between 250 to 500 liters per hectare. And nozzle selection, 04 or 08 Syngenta nozzles. Alternatively, you could use, you know, the normal nozzles that you have, those TJAX nozzles around the same output, that would be fine as well. So this is a study done by the Sports Turf Research Institute, STRI, in UK, where they look to water volume and see whether there's any difference. So over here you have the water volume at 250 liters per hectare, 500, and you also have 500. and you have one spray direction, and two spray direction. Across here, you have untreated control, 1 liter, 1.5, 2 liters, 1.5 plus Colibra wetting agent, 20 liters per hectare. So you could see there is definitely difference between water volume. You tend to see a better results or darker color or more even with a higher carry volume at 500 liters per hectares. And if you look at the treatments with at 1.5 liters with Colibra and without, there is a difference too. So when it's mixed with, when it's used in conjunction with Colibra, that tends to increase enhance the distribution and also have a darker greening tone over there. And this is actually used, the rate is the same, but it's sprayed two different direction. I could see that the 500 liters per hectare with two direction, it seems to looks better. So it is really your decision how you want to apply it. I think one thing to note about is that which water volume to use is mainly around what are you going to mix it with. So some guys who are using the Florentine or some of the foliar fertilizer that has low recommendation of fertility, you may want to use something that is lower. But for example, if you use some other brands like Simplot or something, maybe the recommendation gives you a slightly higher water volume. So that probably helps you to decide which is best for you. Right. With that, I'm going to my last slide of my presentation. Again, Ryder is a 70% fluocyanidin grain pigment. It improves plant health. It gives you protection against the UV ray, enhanced turf appearance, giving you a very natural looking turf, and maximizes disease control. And next, I would like to share with you our launch video for Ryder.
Okay, so when Shane is preparing the video, I hope all participants now have a better understanding of what Ryder represents and what Ryder can do for you and how multifunctional it is. But I would like to launch my final poll for today. I think this is a really important question which all of us are really interested in. And the question is, do you think the COVID-19 pandemic will recover in the next 6 months and the golf industry will be really back to normal? So I think this is one question which many of us have some burning experience and we would like to know as well. So it is, I hope you can really put your thoughts. It's really more about getting the industry to see what is moving forward in the next 6 to 12 months. So the question is, do you think that COVID pandemic will recover in the next 6 months and golf industry will be back to normal? So give you some time to cast in your votes. All right, we can see the bar is actually moving quite fast. So we probably give you another five seconds or so just to put in your last thoughts before we conclude and share the results with the broader team. Okay, I will end the poll now. And I'm going to share the result with all of you. You can see it's quite balanced. I mean, 38% of us doesn't believe the golf course will be back in the 6 months. I think the significant hit has really impacted the golf course, not only the golf course, even the landscape and other businesses very badly. And then we have quite a balance of 30% in here saying that it's not sure, and 32% would think that they are going to recover in the next 6 months. Whatever it is, we are crossing our fingers and we really hope for the best to come. And again, I just want to reiterate is that do let us know, do let Syngenta know if there's anything we can do for you. And you can be sure that Syngenta is always around the corner to give you and render you the support that we can. All right, so I'm going to finish this poll and pass it over to you, Shane.
Thanks, Edwin. Please sit back and relax. Right. Hope you enjoyed the video. And Ryder is officially launched in APAC today, and you could, purchase it from J&J.
All right. Thank you so much, Shane. And I think we have reached the last segment of our webinar, which is the Q&A. There are a lot of questions, and I would really like to invite Mr. Raja, Mr. Lucas, and even Caroline. Please join in if you have the best ability and think that you can reply and you can have the answer. Please join. All right. So I think the first question that we have is that how is Ryder different from the other dyes? Maybe I will just let Lucas to kick off with this question. How about that, Lucas?
I think as we all say that, I think it's the aspect of the natural aspect. I mean, when you're looking for colorant, we always looking for something green. And I remember, even I'm not in the industry as long as Raja or many other guys, all the products we have in the past were really blue. We use as a marker, but not as a colorant or pigment. And Ryder, with a range of rates you can use, he always provides you a green aspect. That's my point of view.
Thank you, Lucas. How about Shane, from a Syngenta technical standpoint?
So I think the biggest difference is these two are not the same product, right? As Lucas mentioned, dye is really used as they use it as a spray indicator, and indeed that is what it's meant for. So dyes are water soluble and degrade rapidly in light. So hence, it could be a matter of 1 day or 2 days they disappear because it's used as a spray indicator, and it also depends on the rate they're using and the brand they're using. In my trial, it's 1 hour or 2 hours maximum. We don't even see it after we finish spray and try and came back to take picture.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Shane and Lucas. I have the next question in here from one of the attendees, and I have been listening to Mr. Raja's interview very carefully because this question is probably directed to even both Lucas and Raja. So it says that, will Ryder stain golfers' attire, including balls or clubs? So Raja, if you want to unmute, earlier on you mentioned, Raja, you say that when on the staining of the golf ball, after application of 10 minutes, it will be over. So if you want to continue to build on that reply.
Yeah, I agree. Most of the dye, and I have used some other pigments previously. As experienced, there is a lot of complaint I received directly from pros. The golf shoe, they have a stain after we spray. Even there is a rain pass by, the stain stick to their shoe, and also sometimes it's in their pants. But I did try it with the pigment Ryder, and after 10 minutes, I just roll the golf ball and try it. And my golfer is in a tee box. I was in a green and spraying, and just want to give a try and see. There is no stain on the golf ball. This is what we are doing because we don't want the same complaint receive us and also the committee. That is the big challenge when you are be a superintendent. You are using a wrong type of a dye, and a lot of complaints and all this. Actually, Ryder is very, very natural and also didn't have any stain. If you have a disorder, but I'm talking about Asian weather. If you go to a raining season, I said, okay, give about 15 minutes or 20 minutes, let it dry. There will be a no stain. Even after rain, no, it's a zero.
Thank you, Raja. I think he mentioned that now we are in a tropical climate. Maybe we ask the expert in the temperate climate. Lucas, would you like to answer to the question as well?
It's pretty much the same answer. I think if it's work for Raja with a big moisture level in Europe, we don't have this problem. And I would say I always give me an hour or 45 minutes between the time I spray and the golfers going on, and I will never have any complaint about it. The only thing is protect your equipment. I mean, you hole cutter or the hole. If you don't protect it, yeah, it's gonna look dirty. It's gonna stay on your equipment. but on the grass, when it will be dry, there is no stain on golf shoes or balls.
Thank you. I think the assurance from the both golf superintendent can tell you is that rest assured, go and use Ryder because there will be not much implication, or rather I would say no implication at all. So the next question we have in here is maybe towards Shane. Can you please advise how many times a year should they use Ryder on the fairway?
I guess it really depends. I couldn't give you an absolute answer for that. It depends on what kind of environment that you are in and what you are trying to achieve. So I could guess that this question is coming from Myanmar, based on the name I see over there. It depends. If your turf actually is, if you're from northern Myanmar, where you kind of experience slight mild winter, so there's time that your turf will become yellowish for a period of time. If that is the scenario that we are looking at, I would say you could, during the winter, you probably can put 1 or 2 applications that could last you through. But then if you're talking about a regular application on fairways, I would say, well, you can go many times. There's nothing really restrict you from doing it. And the question here is that it's probably to think about what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to just enhance the look, or are you just wanting to get some protection from UV damage? So I think some thoughts around that will give you an answer how frequent you like to apply. And also, there are many different ways of applying, right? Some people would like to go on low rate and do it more frequent, and some people will do it high rate and then hope that it lasts for a longer period of time. So again, I think you probably have to think what you would like to achieve and to decide how many applications you could do.
So to build on that, Shane, we have another question in here. It's almost very similar. It says how many times the application we have to do it in a month. So I think you have just shared that there's no restriction, right? I mean, yeah, you want to build on that as well?
Yeah, I don't think there's any restrictions in terms of what you do, but typically I'll recommend, for example, for greens, I'll recommend every 2 or 3 weeks that you apply that with your programs ongoing. It depends on the intensity that you want to go and the rates. If I use our recommendation rates on our label, say at 0.75, I would say every 2 weeks you go with a Ryder application. And on months where UV ray seems to be more of an issue, the UV index are much higher, I would probably bump up my rate a little bit so I got more protection.
All right, thank you, Shane. So here's another question. It has 6 votes. It says that, can we use Ryder for the burning grass effect after herbicides application? So Shane, you want to answer that before we maybe get Lucas or Raja to add in?
Sure. Yes, you could do that because Ryder can be used to kind of mask the unsightfulness place that you have on your turf, and you could also it doesn't really hurt the turf, right? And also when you see that happens is usually after a herbicide treatment, and then you may have some grass that is affected by herbicides at some time, and by having the green pigment you can also help the greening turf to recover as well.
Thank you, Shane. Any experience from your side, Lucas, in terms of trying to sort of
not with the herbicide, but with the same effect. When we use Primo Max on green, you always have the yellow aspect on the power annual, and that's why we start to use Ryder with the Primo Max application, because you can hide really the difference between the power and the bank grass, because
right.
we know Primo Max have more effect on the power than bank grass, and you can hide this effect.
Thank you, Lucas. How about you, Raja?
Okay, I have experience with a herbicide and also a fertilizer burn. Fertilizer burn, we will be doing more towards is like air spray to blend that area. It's not a boom. You can't use a boom. You have to go with a knapsack and you do a air spray because it's only one spot you are targeting. Then you have to go with the air spray. If you are going with the boom spray, there will be a double standard of a color will be appear because it's a yellowish. You try to blend in with the green. That side is going to be a darker. Then you have to do a air spray techniques to do it. These are the issues, especially when you have a major tournaments, something happen on your green, you have to go and do it air spray. Or another one way I'll normally will do, we will go with clippings and mix with the sand and we put it together and mix together and we are just throwing in that herbicide area or turf burn area to blend it in. So you can't see much. Ryder will help on that one. And once it's dry, there will be no stain on a golf balls. That is the safest because you have to be protect yourself before you are doing so. But I have a confidence when you are using a Ryder, no stain over there, nobody is going to complain.
Thank you, Raja. You have just shared all the tricks with the participants, and I think they really appreciate that. All right. So I think the next burning question that is on top of our list is maybe towards Shane, you yourself will probably would answer this. How does Ryder help to protect turf?
So Ryder is just like a sunscreen. If you think about it, it kind of absorb and reflect not only the damaging UV light, but you also help to protect the excessive light that actually prevent the plant from growing well. It helps to so I think in general it really helped to reflect away the lights that is not damaging. So like in my presentation, we have mentioned a number of times with that UV ray exposure, you would damage the synthetic photosynthetic proteins and chlorophyll molecules, in which you will decrease the photosynthetic efficiency.
Thank you, Shane. Just wondering, Lucas, do you think that in your own personal experience applying Ryder, especially in such a major tournament, probably you just shared, do you think that it really helps in the sense that it gives turf the desirable protection? At the same time, it gives superintendent as yourself the confidence to put it down there.
Yeah, for sure. Like as we say before in the Shane presentation, you can see when you use Ryder, especially if you use the weighting engine with the efficiency will be you got more leaf, you got more product on the leaves, and I already see it. I've seen it many times, and that's why when we spray fungicide or herbicide, I always like to use a little bit of Ryder because it's gonna be more on the leaves than by themselves.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lucas, for your answer. The next question in here is maybe Shane, you want to share how long does the color last?
Okay, so how long it lasts, it really depends on whether you apply it on greens or fairways or some other places, so or dormant turf, right? So the first one on greens, if you mow it every day on your greens, visually I think it will last for a week. But if you go take a close look or under the microscope, you could actually see it over. It actually lasts for more than it's maybe less than 2 weeks. It's definitely more than a week. Then if you apply it on higher height of cut that you mow lesser, you typically see it 2 to 3 weeks, for example. So dormant turf, again, you potentially will see much longer. And again, when we talk about mild winter environment, it really depends how actively your turf is growing and because it's removed by clippings. Another thing you could do is that if you have a program with Primo Max, it typically lasts longer because Primo also regulate the turf growth. That means you reduce the amount of clipping that is removed during the period of time.
All right, thank you, Shane. So we still have a few more minutes. Let's go to the next question. How quickly is Ryder rain fastness? So which means I think the question is directing that what's the rain fastness of Ryder? Maybe Shane, you want to share your thoughts before we get Raja to come in, because in Singapore our rainfall is so high. So maybe Raja can share his personal opinion as well. So Shane, you go first.
So again, in our work we done is 1 hour rain fastness. It really depends where we are, right? In an open environment, in a golf course, in country like Singapore or places like Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, you probably feel the same as well. Within 1 hour, it should be dry. But if there is a very, very cloudy day and there is not a lot of wind, etc., it may take slightly longer than 1 hour, I would think so. And if you think that, I know some of you are from the managing sports turf. So if you think about in a closed environment, in a stadium, I think it would take more than an hour, but I'm not exactly sure how long it takes to dry. There's so many factors to think about. Even in an enclosed environment, if you have adequate sunlight and air circulation, within an hour, I'm confident to say yes, you get it dry. But if you do not have access to that, and poor air circulation, it's been raining every day, cloudy, maybe it takes slightly more than an hour.
All right, thanks, Shane. How about Raja? How about your experience? Because you are probably the pioneer of using Ryder in Singapore, and given the weather pattern that we have, it's quite it's quite different in the sense that the rain has been on and off. So, what are your thoughts on this?
It is, I agree with Shane, but it depends what sort of weather condition on the day when we are applying. If there is a lot of dew in a green, and it's going to take about an hour. And prior to application, maybe we have done wetting agent on our greens, then no dew, within about 45 minutes or half an hour it will dry. And it will dry. If the rain is coming very heavy, because we have a heavy rain and just moderate rain, if that sort of situation is depend, if it might be give a big impact to the rider and wash out because of the rain. But commonly when I'm applied a Primo after 1 hour dry, even though there is a rain, continuously rain, I didn't see the rider has been leach out. It still stay on our greens, and easily it'll last for a week, because I'm doing Wednesday Primo for my presentation to make my members happy by Saturday, Sunday. Then until the next following week, Wednesday, we still can see the rider on leaf blades. The color is just blending. We are doing like a cycling. It was consistently the color is there.
All right, thank you, Raja. So I think we left with 5 minutes, and we probably go into the last question. And I saw a couple of questions were evolving around the cost of application. I think on that note, our appointed distributor, which is Jepson and Jason, their representative will get back to you on that. Please, J&J team, please take note of that, and please share the cost with your customer. So we are diving into the last question of the day. I would think that it will make it will create more interest in view of the diversity of our attendees. When is the best time to apply colorant, Shane? Because we do have local, tropical, we do have different climates in here. So perhaps you want to answer that?
When is the best time?
Yep.
I think
every time.
Like,
is that every time?
Yes,
or
the answer
anytime.
for me, it seems that every time. So again, if you're back to the UV thing exposure, you saw the chart I shared earlier on Singapore exposed to the UV index is year-round, right? So there isn't a time that is not a good time. But yes, there are some times there is really optimum period. And I really see the benefit besides the UV protection is really about conditioning your turf to go through the low light period and use it in conjunction with Primo Max. I think that is consistently a problem that we face. Lack of sunlight is, lack of not sunlight, lack of power light for photosynthesis process during the low light period. We have a lot of light in Singapore and Asia, or Southeast Asia. It's just not the right wavelength for you, or not for you, for the plant, the photosynthesis. So my take, the best time is definitely to use it in conjunction with Primo Max to precondition the plant ready to go through stress. Again, the benefit of Primo that we see, increase reserve carbohydrates, get the plant grow stronger under the stressful environment. And with Ryder, how it mimics around chlorophyll and absorbing the right wavelength, again, is the blue and red light that is most efficient for photosynthesis. You don't have the right light all the time, but if you could increase the amount of use synthetic pigment to help to attract the right light, it helps to overall increase the photosynthetic rate. So that's my answer. Again, I don't think every time is the right time, and maybe the low light condition is really my one of the things that I think is important to use in conjunction with Primo. And again, is the UV exposure. Check, find out what is your UV exposure locally. Maybe some places you wouldn't have that much exposure, like Singapore. Again, because we are closer to the equator, right? So the further you get, UV index are different.
Thank you, Shane. So really appreciate all your comments and your answers. I think it adds a lot of value and it gives the attendees a better understanding what Ryder can do for them. So we have reached the end of our webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Syngenta and Jepson and Jason Technology, we will once again like to thank you for taking time off to attend this Ryder launch webinar. When you exit the screen later, there will be a survey link that pops up. We will truly appreciate if you could give your honest opinions towards the survey, and thereafter J&J representative will get in touch with you on how to pass the gift of the token of appreciation over to you. All right. So also thank you very much, Raja, Lucas, Hendrik, Caroline, Camilla, and of course Shane for putting this together. And once again, thank you all, and we hope to see you in our future webinar. Stay safe. Take care. Till then. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
Done. So do we have the debrief here or the other?
The other one. So we will end this call. So we will catch up on the other side. All right. Caroline, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Caroline, you want to join us?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. I'll send you the invite. Bye.
Leave.